What's up, everybody? Dave here. I'm about to share this interview I did on the Heather Boyd Wire YouTube channel where I talk about a $41,000 Etsy ad case study. It's a really interesting interview. It was over on her channel, but I'm going to share it here as well. If you want help with your store hands-on, definitely book a free call in the description below. We'll talk about how I can grow your store together, how we can work together. Also, grab the free Etsy ads cheat sheet as well, and I hope you enjoy.
And without further ado, Dave, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, everybody. Thank you, Heather, for having me on your channel. I super appreciate it. If anybody doesn't know me, my name is Dave Denard. I'm from the Add to Cart YouTube channel. I've been selling on Etsy for over 8 years and coaching Etsy sellers for around 5 or 6. And today, I'm going to share with you a case study from one of my student stores from my mentorship program, a case study of an Etsy ad that did $41,000 in a little bit over a year. I want to share with you how you can apply the successful elements of it to your store, and then we'll talk a little bit at the end with Heather, and it'll be a great time. So I'm going to jump on to this presentation here. So Etsy ads, $41,000 case study. As you can see here, the statistics, $41,508 in revenue and $12,000 in ad spend. This is well over a 3 ROAS. And, first I want to say that, when you're looking at your Etsy ads dashboard, you want to have a 2 ROAS is essentially breaking even. And for a lot of sellers, especially with jewelry sellers, your time is an element in that equation as well. So don't just glance at it and see that maybe you're making more than you're spending and think everything is okay. We will talk about ad calculation to really figure out if you are profitable later on in the presentation. And I also have the calculation in my free Etsy ad cheat sheet that I'll share with you guys. But without further ado, 2 ROAS and 3 ROAS is close to breaking even. So you really want to see a higher ROAS than that. But this is the screenshot from the student store. What we will cover today is SEO, Etsy ad calculations, and more. What you can do to make your ads better and common mistakes with Etsy ads, because a lot of people, turn on Etsy ads and expect a lot to happen without understanding it fully, and it's totally okay. It's very common for that to happen. Sometimes people get lucky, and that's awesome. But even if you get lucky, you still want to understand what is happening. So the first element of this successful listing, it was a customized product. This product had a custom text element. So is there anything you can do to add customization to your products? Whether that means custom text or custom photos, they both do well. So for jewelry, for example, since we're on Heather's channel and it's a jewelry channel, in a little like circle charm or something that you have a stamp that can add text to it. That's very simple for handmade sellers to add. And then even if you want to go up one step up from that, there are machines that you can put photos onto little charms as well. So you could have your wire element, and then you could have a photo or a text element on that. And customization is a huge thing on Etsy. It's a huge niche on Etsy. And if you can add a custom element to your jewelry, then you can see a whole new level of an audience unlock for you. So just think about that a little bit, what you could add to it. It could even be, not so much custom, but just more offerings, dog breeds, shapes of dog breeds, if they're very recognizable. So just ask yourself right now, what could I add to it to try to tap into that customization? Because it was a large aspect of this case study's success. So the next thing I want to talk about, since I mentioned niches, is who is buying it. I want you to ask yourself, who is buying your jewelry? Who is buying your product? The Etsy ad we're studying had a specific group to target with not just the SEO, but the product itself. Making jewelry or any product just because is great, and that's how I started. My first store was a jewelry store. When I started, I would make things just because. That's beautiful, I'm gonna make that, whatever. But then as an entrepreneur, you have to think about who it's going in front of. And who it's going in front of means that you are going to be changing the keywords that you use to describe it. So we'll talk about that in the next slide. So making jewelry or any product just because is great. However, on Etsy, if you do not know your end customer or your target group, you might not sell to anyone. Meaning you might use very, very broad language, or I'll show some examples. Hyper specific can also hurt you as well. So what does this translate to? Pick a niche to make jewelry for. Or pick an age to make jewelry for. This gives your titles and tags much better direction. Because, for example, you might have very niche jewelry, but be trying to sell it to a very broad audience. When you just need to find your people that will buy it. So that's why I want to ask you, or I want you to ask yourself, who is buying it? And that really helps form the direction of who it's going to go in front of. So SEO and who is buying it. Your SEO might be too broad to find that intended customer. That's what I was just talking about. And other times it's too specific. You have to test and find a balance. Don't do one or the other, because a lot of products on Etsy will do really well with a very broad audience. Those are typically the products that have strong problem-solving qualities. Like home organization can be sold to a wide range of people, or things like that solve a problem, some type of home decor. Like that is functional, like storage, wall art, whatever it may be. There's a lot of broad things that can work. But with jewelry, oftentimes, most times, jewelry has a very specific theme. So know your theme and know what keywords describe those themes. So an example here, when you're going too broad, but it's a niche product that has a theme, anniversary gift for her, silver wire jewelry, women's necklace, right? Those are broad keywords. Those are good keywords. You can sprinkle those in, and I encourage you to sprinkle those in. However, if that's all that your title consists of are keywords just like this, but the design might be a very niche design. It might be something that only a group of people understand and would enjoy, but you're attempting to put it in front of these wide audiences. That's when listings can fall flat on their face, have low conversion rate, and then ultimately, pull your whole store down. So that's an example of being too broad, but with a niche product. So in the next example, I want to talk about being too specific. So I see this a lot with jewelry makers and even artists and stuff, like painters and whatnot. They'll use industry-specific terms. Or even if for jewelry specifically, industry-specific terms that will attract or make the algorithm put your product in front of other jewelers looking for supplies. So you want to be careful. Here's a too specific one that I made that I thought would be relative to Heather's audience in this channel, is that X gauge wire handmade jewelry, and then X, whatever that X stone is, X stone necklace, and then some more industry term that only you, other jewelers, but not your end customer would know. So be very careful in that sense, because when it comes to Etsy ads, the topic of this conversation, when it comes to Etsy ads, if you're using very broad terms or your keywords aren't working out, it doesn't only result in your listings not doing well. It also results in your money being wasted. And that's something I help my students out a lot with is saving money on Etsy ads, because it doesn't have to be a turn on, set and forget, hope that it does its best. And I'll give a link to get free calls for everybody that we can talk about, going into mentorship or whatever, because I help a lot with Etsy ads, calculating these things and actually becoming profitable. So SEO for ads, I was just kind of hinting at, is the Etsy ad we are studying had SEO placing the product in front of specific ready-to-buy customers, not window shoppers. Okay, so that balance between the very broad and very specific, essentially, because the SEO for your ads matter almost more than your organic listings. Bad SEO on ads means wasted money. I was just talking about that. When it's organic, you don't really feel it. You just see it. You just see that your listings might not be doing so hot, and you wonder what's going on. Side note, sometimes people will see a listing isn't doing so well and change the title and tags of an existing listing, which is a huge no-no. If you're going to change something, make a copy of it, deactivate the original, and put the changes on that copy. Because if a listing isn't doing bad, organically. Changing the title and tags is only attempting to give a sunken ship a facelift or something, when you might as well just get a new boat and put it in the water, per se, if that analogy makes sense. So make sure your listings SEO is accurate, appropriate, and highly searched. That's another big thing. After a while, many sellers on Etsy will become very familiar with their niche and what keywords are highly searched. But if you haven't ever, gone and done the research and looked at the keywords you're using or want to use or find new keywords, you might be using keywords that aren't searched that often. And it might be a simple change of just using multiple highly searched keywords. And there's multiple tools out there. The two biggest ones, eRank and Marmalade, either or. I use both. It's what you prefer, honestly. So just make sure you're using highly searched keywords. And side note from there, there's always 3 metrics on both of those tools. It's search, engagement, and competition. You just want to make sure that it's green, green, red. High search, high engagement, or medium search, medium engagement, as long as it's not dead. And then competition is always going to be high. You do want to find low-hanging fruit. That is a strategy where you find only low-hanging fruit, low competition keywords. But I'll tell you this, we're talking about Etsy.com. We're not talking about some obscure handmade website that only like 10 sellers use because they're mad at Etsy. There's a lot of those out there. And I'm not knocking them, but we're talking about Etsy.com. If you find a keyword or a search phrase that is low competition, you can bet that next year or even 6 months from now, that will be a high competition keyword because people are always looking for new keywords. So anyway, side note on that. On your SEO for ads, some of the people watching that know Etsy ads will know that in your Etsy ads dashboard, you can turn off certain keywords that your ads show for. And my stance on that is, turn off the keywords in your ads if you have the time. Some people don't have the time. Sometimes, your ads are spending so quickly, you're making sales so quickly that by the time you get to a listing and turn off keywords, it might be time to turn it off because it's spent too much, or just let it roll because it's making money. If that's the case, then yeah, you can go and weed out some of those bad ones. But sometimes they'll run away on you and you just need to turn off the whole listing. If you're launching a lot of listings, it's okay to not be hawking the ads, keywords, and turning them off all the time. Some stores are too big, have too much momentum, and you just simply don't have the time to go in there and look at every tiny little search phrase. So the next thing, we want to talk about profit. This ad that we're studying, like on the case study, it was profitable right from the beginning, but you don't get that on every single listing. You do have to test new listings and add listings to your ad campaign. So in order to do that, you can't just sit there and be stagnant, turn off listings, and then you're going to be stuck with a handful of dead listings. On this ad, we knew how much we were willing to spend to make one sale. Sometimes you must turn off ads if they are spending over this amount and either not getting sales or getting unprofitable ones. So you have to know how much money you're willing to spend to get one sale and profit, because you'll see revenue and spend, but sometimes even if revenue is higher than spend, that's not the end of the story. That's not the end of the equation. You still have your material costs, your time, your shipping, your fees, your taxes, everything like that. And that's something I help with, is calculating those what I call comfortable cost per conversion. It's kind of eye-opening sometimes when a seller thinks that they're profitable, but you break it down with them and they're absolutely not. They're actually losing money every sale. Even seemingly profitable ads can be losing you money. More revenue than spend does not equal profitable. But it is a place to start. It's a great place to start. That's obviously where you want to be in the beginning, versus spending more and making nothing. So too many sellers set and forget. And when it comes to profitability, I want to touch on this. Because eventually turning off most listings, you'll turn on your ad campaign, you'll choose whatever listings you want to do or do all of them, and then you'll slowly turn off listings you don't feel are doing well, either because you don't know to calculate everything, or you just are getting sick of things. This leads to a stagnant handful of ads and no clear direction. So if you turn it on, hope for the best, and then slowly turn off listings over time, you're only going to be set with a small set handful of listings that are doing You have to be adding new listings to your ad campaign. You have to be listing new listings, making new designs, whatever it may be, because your ad campaign is like a bonfire, and you have to be throwing logs in constantly. So turn off your runaways, things that are spending way too much, and add new listings. Otherwise, you'll never move forward. Your next listing that takes off can be right around the corner. Like the case study that we're looking at, that was after adding a lot of listings and turning off a lot of listings. When you see a giant, home garden with lots of awesome plants in it, that's after a lot of work. That's after a lot of planting, weeding, and harvesting. It's not just as simple as throw some seeds in the soil, everything pops up, and everything's awesome. You do have to weed things out. You do have to work towards it. And everybody watching, I'll give a link to Heather to put in the description for free coaching calls, 10 minutes, to see if we could work together. And then also I have a free Etsy ad cheat sheet that helps run through all this kind of stuff, because looking at it on your own can be kind of daunting when you're first starting off, or even if you're an experienced seller, and that cheat sheet helps you out a lot. So that's everything for this case study. Heather, if you have any questions for me, anything you want to add to this, please let me know.
Yeah, I actually, it's ironic that you're talking about personalized items for several reasons. One is I was just approached by a company that creates a product to help personalize items. So everybody could look out for that video coming soon. And that's the reason that we actually had success on Etsy, was because as we originally started just selling jewelry, just random jewelry we used to actually sell on the street. And then on a whim, I posted a couple of my husband's wire bicycles, and people asked me if I could create custom wedding cake toppers with these bicycles. And so that's how we inadvertently found our niche on Etsy, and ended up, paying our mortgage within a few years, thanks to this. And that's a lot of our business now, is doing custom orders. And I always say yes to everything. My husband's a little more resistant. I end up doing all the custom items, but it's really important, A, to, make sales, but B, to discover new products, type of thing. So I definitely highly encourage customization. I think that's huge, especially on Etsy. People are looking for custom items. And I guess my questions, I have a few that people constantly ask me. The main thing is, like, how do you even start on Etsy if you have no tech experience, no confidence, and it overlaps with the idea of Etsy ads, is like, even just getting started on Etsy. Like, what is your best advice to people who feel like they have no tech experience to get started?
Good question. Yeah. So the good news about Etsy is it's not its own website, right? Where you're running everything. You have to design absolutely everything. There is a lot of just type in your name, type in your shop name, add these photos, type in a description, and you're good to go. So it is very user friendly for beginners, compared to if you started your own website like Shopify. So my advice is to just start. And don't beat yourself up if you're just beginning, because everybody has a learning curve. No matter who you are, you can absolutely sell something on Etsy. So just start. Don't beat yourself up. Be patient with yourself, and you'll learn from there, because Etsy is very user friendly.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And there are a lot of Etsy. There's Etsy help on the website, but a lot of, if you just Google YouTube, there's often tutorials on how to do things. And I actually just recently opened a Shopify site, mainly because you hear about all these Etsy sellers that lose their shop for little, either copyright issues or review issues or something. Sometimes it's beyond people's control. So I think Etsy is a great place to start. And then if you do want to have your own website, actually Shopify customer service is amazing. They talked me through, I was hesitant for years, and they talked me through setting it up. But I imagine a lot of the concepts, whether you're on Etsy or Shopify, kind of overlap with regards to branding and ads and things like that. So we'll start with Etsy and see how people do with that. But it's definitely a great place for beginners to get their feet wet and just discover what it's like to sell online, really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It can be life-changing too.
Yes.
When you all you need is an Etsy store in the beginning, because Etsy brings all your traffic to you, because it's a
Yes.
marketplace, and it's changed many people's lives.
Yeah, and not to give up, because I have actually taught people how to set up on Etsy, and I had one lady that became, well, a couple of ladies that became extremely successful on Etsy and are still doing it. And then one guy put up a few listings and gave up after a week, and I'm like, well, that's not how it works.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Oh
people,
yeah.
it's a bit of it's a journey for sure, and you have to enjoy the journey as well. Okay, so let me, and then I guess the other main question I would have was, because I do teach people how to make specific designs for wire jewelry and things like that. And my question would be for them was, how do you stand out and differentiate yourself? Because I know it's a lot about branding, your logo, your brand name, your presentation, your photos, all of that. So what would be your biggest tips to people who want to make similar types of jewelry but stand out?
Good question. Good question. So start with branding, decide on a color scheme, decide on what looks like you. Because oftentimes, if you have no branding, then you might not know what you want to look like, and everything will be a little bit confusing. When there's a cohesive look, meaning color, text, font, that's more for, your own website. But even within your own infographics, the font you want to use, the color schemes you want to use on infographics, or even your logo, things like that, make sure everything's cohesive. Then with your photos, your actual product images, get really good at product images. You can start with a phone. Phones are great nowadays. When I started coaching on Etsy, when I started this channel, I made a whole video about how you need to have your own camera. That was, 8 years ago, and DSLR cameras were still much better. And, if you know what you're doing, they are better than phone cameras. But nowadays, and even back then a little bit, you can use your phone in the beginning. You don't even have to graduate to an actual DSLR camera. But have really good product images. Get great at them. Have your own feel for that as well. Create a little scene. Since we're talking about jewelry, the scene doesn't have to be huge. It can be literally like 5 square feet of your house where you have all your props and everything, and you can test with so many different things. And you could get a roll of paper, multiple rolls of paper that are different colors. Figure out what color you want your background. Add some props in there. Do you want a little wood bowl for your stuff to sit on top of? Do you want, like I used to do, that wood bowl with branches in the background and everything, because it was a wooden and crystal jewelry store. So it was very nature oriented. So I had a lot of nature oriented props in it from that first store. So get very, very good at product photos. That is how you're going to stand out. That's how you're going to beat somebody with like a flat lay or anything like that. Product photos and branding, more specifically color scheme. That's what's going to set you apart.
Yeah, I really enjoy when I see shops that have very consistent styles of photographs. And I know that Etsy now doesn't, well, they allow it, but they always give you a warning to change your photos if you put collages or things like that. So they really want very pure, simple photos that they know that the customer will click on. I think, and that's the thing about being found on Etsy. You want to make clickable listings. So photos would be like the number one thing. And then beyond that, you really work on your SEO and your descriptions and all that type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Perfect.
absolutely.
Let me just check if there are any more. Can you just give a little brief overview of the Etsy offsite ads too, as opposed to creating your own ads? Because I know now Etsy has sort of imposes ads on listings. And at first I was really resistant to it, because I'm like, oh, they're charging me for ads. But you only get charged if you make a sale. And I found that I actually have made some sales through Etsy offsite ads. So maybe just tell people what that is and the difference between that and ads they make themselves.
Absolutely. So offsite ads are when Etsy takes listings from their platform and places them across the internet. You don't pay for the clicks. You don't pay for anything like that. With Etsy ads, you do. When you make a sale, and only when you make a sale, that's when you pay a percentage of that sale that you made. You can opt out of it at a certain point or before a certain point, but after your store reaches a higher level, you can't opt out of it anymore. So it's easy to get frustrated about that. If you want to, I understand why people would get frustrated about it, but it's just more sales if it does work out for you. And in the grand scheme of things, if that one offsite ad sale doesn't allow you to be profitable, because they do take a pretty decent chunk out of it, but there's plenty of room to profit still. If you're not profitable after an offsite ad sale, then you need to review your profitability, your material costs, and your pricing. But offsite ads is different from Etsy ads, and you don't see offsite ad stuff within your Etsy ad budget. There's a completely different spot for that.
Okay. Yeah, because I know I've definitely increased my prices significantly over the years because I realized there was a margin to have a higher prices and also to cover fees and things like that. So I know when people have complained about, rise in Etsy fees and that, I know it's bad, but at the same time, if it's a difference between making sales or not, and also sometimes when you have higher prices, people value your products more. So that's, it's important to value what you are making and charge accordingly, type of thing. Yeah. And do you know how Etsy decides which listings they use for offsite ads? Like, are they just listings they deem profitable?
They likely choose them. I don't work for Etsy. I don't have any insider knowledge, but my educated guess is that they choose listings that have a good click-through rate, meaning it's clicked on when it's click-through rate is a measurement between impressions and clicks. Impressions is when something shows up on a computer screen. So if it shows up on computer screens and people click it often, that's click-through rate, a high click-through rate. So if they have a high click-through rate and a high conversion rate, meaning the more people buy it, the higher the conversion rate. If those two metrics are high, then that tells the algorithm or whatever automated system they're using to run these outside ads that it's worth trying to make money with that ad. So that would be the smartest indicator that they would use, and that is like very likely it.
Yeah. So as long as it's being clicked on and not necessarily has already sales that they don't need the ads, type of thing. Yeah. Okay, that's great. Well, if anybody else has questions with regards to anything about Etsy, you could comment below the video, and either I can answer questions, Dave can answer questions, and we'll put all his links underneath as well. And maybe I'll link up some really interesting videos that would be helpful for beginners, to get started, type of thing. If you want to recommend some, I'll link them up in the description as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to hearing from all of your viewers. The links will be in the description, and I hope everybody has a beautiful day.